Government officials insist that this is an isolated incident. We will continue to inform as this story unfolds.
The following is a social media post made by author and journalist Shane Cashman on April 27th, 2026. I'm so sick of conspiracy theorists spinning everything into a new conspiracy theory. The shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner was obviously real and totally organic. False flags don't happen anymore. Sometimes security for an event with the president is lax. Sometimes they don't fly drones over rooftops to check for hidden snipers. Sometimes they only post counter snipers on roofs at campaign rallies on the exact days a hidden sniper shows up. Just because there was a magician performing on stage at the White House Correspondents' Dinner as the shooting started doesn't make this event part of a broader sleight of hand. It's not like the CIA once hired magicians to help put together a pamphlet called the Official CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. It's not that deep, bro. It's insane to think it's all theater conducted by an ancient evil. Just because Abraham Lincoln was shot in the head in a theater by one of the most well-known actors of that time doesn't mean our nation is comprised of dark forces who fetishize power, symbolism, chaos, and violence. It doesn't mean they've turned fame into idol worship. It doesn't mean they can isolate, fund, and radicalize any sad lunatic. It doesn't mean these so-called deep state types use violence to justify budgets and policies. It's not like the CIA created Charles Manson. It's not like the CIA was following Oswald. The magic bullet is just as real today as it was 60 years ago. Sometimes random Twitter accounts from 2023 only have one post, and sometimes that one post happens to be the name of the shooter who will attempt to assassinate the president 3 years later. Sometimes these random Twitter accounts also happen to have a banner on their page that features an image from a website called Time Machine. And yes, this image might look like a melting magic eye, so it's normal for it to become a Rorschach test where people believe they see Trump raising his fist in the air yelling, "Fight, fight, fight," from when he survived the Butler, PA assassination attempt in 2024. Sometimes they're just crazy people who carry out political violence. Have you ever heard of a lone wolf? Or Sirhan? Sure, the FBI will later say they were on our radar, and maybe most of the 3D printed looking alphabet agency cutouts were previously in BlackRock commercials or ABC specials. Sometimes they wear IDF sweatshirts. Sometimes they train the same ranges as Homeland Security. You and I both know that the government would never allow something awful to happen. They would have stopped 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or the Oklahoma City bombing if they had any prior knowledge. It's literally just a coincidence that the shooter had connections to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory at a time when NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory scientists are winding up dead or missing. And it's literally just a coincidence that the account that posted the shooter's name in 2023 also worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory at the same time. The shooter shot at the magnetometer. Please tell the conspiracy theorists in your life that we always called metal detectors magnetometers. We're talking about manifestos, time machines, discombobulators, ghosts, murmurs, missing scientists manipulating space-time and annihilating distance. We're talking about close encounters, ecto-1s, and proton packs. If you trusted the science, you'd know this was a safe and effective assassination attempt. The internet isn't dead, and bots aren't deployed to manipulate narratives. Influencers don't get secret money to shill soda. The military, media, influencer industrial complex would never profit off the commodification of assassinations. This isn't about Epstein. This isn't about FISA warrants. This isn't about the giant doomsday data center beneath the White House. They're definitely not mainstreaming conspiracy theories to weaponize conspiracy theories against the conspiracy theorists. The conspiracy theorist autistic level of pattern recognition might be entertaining for a podcast, but it's getting old. It doesn't matter when the shooter booked the hotel room. It doesn't matter if he's dead or AI. It doesn't matter that it looked like a controlled environment. It doesn't matter that some of the White House Correspondents Dinner guests crave victim status to help pad their Substack numbers. It doesn't matter that it feels like we're trapped in a 24/7 WrestleMania. Just let the influencers who crawled on their hands and knees in fear for their lives post their gleeful, I survived an assassination duck-faced selfies. Anyway, ballroom, 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 ballroom. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dancing Toaster. I am Pastor Nelly, and this is the place where we wrestle with the intersection of faith and the unexplained. I gotta start by issuing an apology to those who were looking forward to the Bell Witch Part 2 today. It is still coming, I assure you, but man, recent events were far too important to ignore. Presidential assassination attempts don't happen every day, but it does appear they are happening more in my lifetime than any other. That being said, big shout out to my fellow millennials. We get a bad rap, don't we?
Y'all are lazy, entitled, and addicted to your phones.
Apparently we ruined everything from napkins to home ownership. That's the garbage people say about us, but let's be honest about something. We didn't grow up in normal times. We were kids when the world shifted on September 11th, old enough to remember the fear, young enough to not fully understand it, and then we spent the rest of our lives in the aftermath. Wars that never seemed to end, security that never seemed to relax, a constant sense that something had changed and wasn't going back. Then we stepped into adulthood just in time for the 2008 financial crisis. Right when we were told to build our futures, the floor dropped out on us. Jobs disappeared, opportunities shrank. The rules we were told to follow suddenly didn't work anymore. And just when things started to stabilize, here comes the vid, right? COVID-19, lockdowns, isolation, entire industries flipped upside down overnight, the largest wealth transfer in human history. People lost businesses, relationships, and years of their lives, and on top of it all, a flood of conflicting information that made it hard to know what was true, what was exaggerated, and what was being shaped in real time to control us. And that's just the headlines, folks. We came of age alongside the rise of social media. We watched the internet go from something you logged into to something that logs into you. We've seen narratives form, spread, collapse, and get rewritten in real time. We've watched trust in institutions rise and fall, and then fall, and then fall. So yeah, maybe we question things more. Maybe we're a little slower to just accept the official version of events without thinking it through. Maybe we've developed a kind of instinct, not perfect, not always right, but real, that says, hold on, I've seen this one before. Because we have. We've lived through enough unprecedented moments that the world itself doesn't hit the same anymore. At some point, you stop treating it like a once-in-a-lifetime event and start asking whether it's part of a pattern. And maybe that's why this kind of conversation resonates. Not because we think we have all the answers, but because we've seen enough to know when something doesn't quite add up. So yeah, shout out to my millennials. We're not crazy. We're just paying attention. But whether you're a millennial or not, I want to thank you for being here. I'm grateful to have people listening from all ages, from all walks of life. You guys are amazing, especially the toasties that contribute to my Patreon. You're helping to keep the lights on for this struggling millennial. Thank you as well to the many people that have blessed me up over on buymeacoffee.com. You guys blow me away with your kindness and your generosity. A big thank you for those that are scooping up some of the new merch as well. Today's episode is clearly not what was scheduled, which is why I'm calling it a Toaster Talk. It's a little messier, a little less scripted, and a little more spicy as well. I threw this together because, again, another unprecedented moment occurred this weekend. Another attempt was allegedly made on the life of our current president, Donald J. Trump. I got a lot of thoughts about what happened and what's happening, and it involves everything from assassinations to UFO research. I found that post I read to you on Instagram within hours of it going up. Author and journalist Shane Cashman posted it, and I fell in love with it in all of its sass and wit. It said so many things in a way that I wish I was cool enough and smart enough to say. I didn't know anything about this guy before seeing the post. I read it, I immediately gave him a follow, and I'm going to buy his book coming out in September. And I knew I was going to share his post with you today, but in the process, it's kind of become the launchpad or outline I wanted to use to discuss this event, as well as the events that may or may not be connected to it. So buckle up, folks, because today is going to be a bumpy one. I will be placed on watch list. Heck, you might be too, just for listening. Maybe our names might be next to each other. Watch list besties. And today is low production, but high risk. Let's dive in, shall we? Let's start with what actually happened, or at least what we've been told. Saturday night, April 25th, 2026. The White House Correspondents Dinner, annual tradition, the president, the press, the cabinet, all packed into the Washington Hilton in their black tie finest. It's the one night a year where the people who run the country and the people who cover the country sit in the same room, eat the same food, and pretend to like each other. Trump was there. First time he'd attended as sitting president. He skipped it throughout his entire first term. Years of invitations declined. This was to be his debut. And the one time he showed up, somebody tried to kill him. At approximately 8:40 p.m., gunshots rang out near the main security screening area just outside the ballroom. Secret Service immediately moved. Trump, Melania, VP Vance all evacuated. One Secret Service officer was struck in the chest, but his bulletproof vest saved his life. The suspect, a 31-year-old engineer and part-time tutor from Torrance, California, named Cole Thomas Allen, was tackled to the ground near the screening area and taken into custody. Armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and several knives, he allegedly and conveniently sent his family a manifesto about 10 minutes before the shots rang out. That's the event. That's what we've been told happened. Now, lately I've been talking about witches and magic, so what's up with the magician here? That's the first thing Shane Cashman wants you to notice in this lengthy social media post I shared with you. The celebrity entertainment for the 2026 Correspondents Dinner was not a comedian, nor a musician. It was Oz Perlman, a mentalist, a magician, a professional practitioner of misdirection, sleight of hand, and making people believe they saw something they didn't. He was performing for Trump on stage in the moments immediately before the shooting started. Cashman connects this strange detail to something real and declassified. The CIA once literally hired a professional magician to help produce a training document called the Official CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. That document exists, friends. You can look it up. The agency worked with a professional magician named John Mulholland to teach the intelligence officers how to use sleight-of-hand techniques in the field, how to slip substances into drinks, how to pass documents invisibly, how to make things appear and disappear. And this was all declassified back in 2007. The CIA and magic have a controversial and documented relationship, and not all of it's stage magic, by the way, either, but we'll save that for another episode. Cashman then says Abraham Lincoln was shot in a theater by an actor. He drops this line almost casually and then keeps it moving, but we're not going to let it pass by. He writes, just because Abraham Lincoln was shot in the head in a theater by one of the most well-known actors of the time doesn't mean our nation is comprised of dark forces who fetishize power, symbolism, chaos, and violence. Man, he knows how to punch. If you've checked out some of the other episodes tied to this, especially the Epstein one, you know that that one resonates with me. John Wilkes Booth was not a random disgruntled citizen. He truly was one of the most famous actors in America at the time. He was handsome, celebrated, he was connected, and he walked into a theater, a place of performance and illusion, of spectacle, and he shot Abraham Lincoln in the head. Cashman is using Lincoln not just as a historical footnote. He's pointing at something about the aesthetics of American political violence. The symbolism, the theater of it, literally. The way these events are staged, whether deliberately or coincidentally, in locations and contexts that carry meaning. A president shot in a theater by an actor. Now another president who was an actor nearly shot while a mentalist was performing on stage. He's simply asking you to consider whether power in America has always had a relationship with performance, with the theatrical, with the management of spectacle. But Cashman also alludes to Butler, Pennsylvania. Told you, buckle up. Before we go any further into the night of April 25th, we need to talk about the last time someone allegedly tried to kill Donald J. Trump. Cashman references it directly. Without it, the pattern he's drawing is incomplete. July 13th, 2024. An outdoor campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks allegedly climbed under the roof of a building adjacent to the rally site, a building with a direct sightline to the stage where Trump was speaking, and he allegedly fired 8 rounds from an AR-15 style rifle. One bullet appears to have grazed Trump's ear. One rally-goer was killed, 2 other critically wounded. We're told Crooks was shot dead by a Secret Service sniper 12 seconds after he began firing. The famous photograph, the one that went around the world in seconds, shows Trump standing at the podium, fists raised, blood running down his face and ears, surrounded by Secret Service agents, his mouth wide open, screaming, "Fight, fight, fight." The American flag perfectly lined up behind him. The image is so perfectly composed, so cinematically exact, that photo editors and veterans of conflict journalism noted immediately how extraordinary it was. The timing, the angle, the lighting, the posture, all there. In a moment of genuine chaos, with a shooter on a roof and agents moving in every direction, a single frame captured something that looked less like a crime scene photograph and more like a campaign poster. That photograph was on the front page of every newspaper on Earth within hours. It became one of the most reproduced political images in American history within days. It is now iconic, the way images become iconic when they do the work of myth-making, when they don't just document a moment but define one. Ask yourself, who benefited from that image existing? Now let's look at the mechanics of what happened, because the official account has problems that the investigations documented and then largely set aside. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, Congress's nonpartisan auditor, found that senior Secret Service officials had received classified intelligence about a specific threat to Trump's life 10 days before the Butler rally. They did not share that information with the agents and local law enforcement actually responsible for securing the event. The Secret Service had no process for sharing classified threat information with partners unless it was considered an imminent threat. So the people on the ground, the people making decisions about where to post snipers, how to secure the perimeter, well, they didn't know what their own headquarters knew. The Secret Service denied at least 10 separate requests from Trump's own protective detail for additional resources, counter-drone systems, counter-assault team personnel, additional counter-snipers, all denied. The building crooks used, the AGR building, had a clear sight line to the stage. It was elevated. It was close. It was placed entirely outside the secure perimeter. Local law enforcement spotted crooks lurking around that building with a rangefinder and sent text messages warning Secret Service about a suspicious individual. The warnings were apparently not relayed in time. Nobody confirmed with local sniper teams that they were in position before Trump took the stage. The communications infrastructure between federal and local units had not been established in advance. We're told crooks had visited the rally site 6 days before the event to conduct reconnaissance. He climbed onto the roof using an air conditioning unit. Nobody stopped him, and he got off 8 shots. Here's what's strange about Thomas Crooks when you look at him directly. He was 20 years old. He was a registered Republican, but he had donated $15 to a progressive voter turnout group when he was 17, a single donation, through Act Blue, processed on the day of Biden's inauguration. He was described by people who knew him as a loner, awkward, smart but odd. He had been bullied. He had tried out for the school rifle team and been rejected. He had no known political manifesto. He had no stated motive, no clear ideology that explained why he would climb onto a roof and try to kill the frontrunner for the presidency of the United States. The FBI initially said he had 1 social media account. It later emerged he had at least 17. YouTube, Snapchat, whatever. That information came out a year after the fact. He was dead within 12 seconds of firing his first shot. He could not be questioned. He could not explain himself. He could not contradict whatever account was subsequently constructed around him or the event. And when people tried to construct a fuller account themselves, when Congress tried, they say they were stopped. Republican Congressmen Mike Kelly and Pat Fallon ran the House task force investigating Butler. These were Trump allies, Trump's own people. And what they told the New York Post after the investigation concluded was that the FBI never shared Crook's social media files with their committee. Mike Kelly said, "We were stymied so much by the feds on what we could look at, what we couldn't look at. We knew we were going to get stonewalled on a lot of stuff." He added, "I think there's so many unanswered questions about it. They don't want people to handle the truth." Here's why that matters. The FBI initially testified to Congress that it had found 1 social media account belonging to Thomas Crooks. Just 1. A year later, it emerges that he had at least 17 containing what sources described as a detailed, years-long digital trail of violent rhetoric and calls for political violence written under his real name. Tucker Carlson claimed to have obtained access to Crook's Google Drive and said the posts were explicit and unambiguous. Carlson wrote, "The FBI lied, and we can prove it because we have his posts. The question is why?" The FBI's investigation concluded in November 2025. No motive, no co-conspirators, case closed. FBI Director Kash Patel, Trump's own appointee, confirmed by Trump's Senate, reporting ultimately to Trump, informed the president of the conclusion personally as a, quote, victim of this case. Patel is also the guy who couldn't find his rear end if he used both hands because he said there was nothing credible in the Epstein files when asked. But Trump declared himself satisfied with the results of the investigation. His own base, though, was not. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman, Trump loyalist, one of the loudest MAGA voices in the country at the time, publicly accused Trump of a cover-up, said he was sitting on information about crooks, said he wouldn't release it. Asked why he hadn't cracked down on who was responsible, former Trump administration official Joe Kent went on Tucker Carlson's show and said investigations into Butler had been prematurely shut down, and that there were questions he claimed he was not allowed to ask. Carlson himself named names: Kash Patel, former FBI Director Christopher Wray, Deputy Director Dan Bongino, and said they were all hiding important information. I'm inclined to believe him because of how pathetically they handled the Epstein files, and no, I won't stop talking about them. The people most loudly saying the truth about Butler is being buried are not liberals. They are not the mainstream media. They are me. They are Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican congressmen who ran the official investigation, former Trump White House officials. These are the people who built Trump's movement, who carried his water through 2 terms, who are now publicly saying the investigation into an attempt on his life was buried, and Trump himself is sitting on the information the same way he's sitting on the Epstein files that he gets so mad about. But that his wife spoke on less than 3 weeks ago from the grand foyer of the White House, no less. While her husband, President Trump, is saying, "Oh, they only implicate the Democrats," and "Oh, they're a hoax." Well, which is it? Do they implicate the Democrats or are they a hoax? Well, while he can't make up his mind on that, she's speaking from the White House. She's saying, quote, "Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth." Then she says this: "I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public, if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record. Then and only then will we have the truth." But again, her husband, President Trump, doesn't want us talking about Epstein or the files. Kash Patel isn't going to do anything about the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. Sounds like they want to get his girlfriend out on some plea deal, and new acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, the same man who 2 weeks later would stand at the podium and say it wasn't clear whose bullet hit the Secret Service agent at the White House Correspondents Dinner, said the Epstein files matter should not be part of anything going forward at the Department of Justice. In any case, Trump controls the FBI through Kash Patel. Trump was briefed as a, quote, victim in Butler. Trump declared himself satisfied, and Trump has not released the files on this or anything else important. Right now, there is no motive on record. There is no explanation on record. There's no account of why a 20-year-old climbed onto a roof with an AR-15 and nearly changed the course of American history. We get silence. And we get silenced. And when it was all over, after the investigations, after the congressional hearings, after the former Secret Service director resigned in disgrace, the agent who was the top-ranking Secret Service official on Trump's detail that day in Butler, well, he was promoted. His name is Sean Curran. He is now the director of the United States Secret Service. The man in charge of protecting the president on the day the president was nearly killed was rewarded with the top job in the agency. Now hold all of that and add this: the image of Trump with his fists raised, bleeding, screaming, "Fight, fight, fight." It became the visual centerpiece of his entire campaign after that. It was on merchandise within hours. It defined the Republican National Convention the following week. It was cited by donors, by voters, me included, by international allies, as the moment they decided Trump was the real thing, a man who had literally been shot and refused to fall. His poll numbers did not fall, they rose. His fundraising exploded as well. The political momentum it generated was, by any measurable standard, extraordinary. So let's get back to the Cashman post, shall we? Sometimes they only post counter snipers on roofs at campaign rallies on the exact days a hidden sniper shows up. The one day they didn't have a counter sniper on that particular roof was the same exact day someone showed up on the exact roof with a rifle. He's sarcastically describing the official record. The counter snipers were not on the roof. The sniper was. The warnings didn't get through. The security requests were denied. The building was outside the perimeter. The photograph was perfectly aligned. The shooter was dead before he could speak a word. And then the cleanup began. The AGR building, the one crooks used, the one with a direct sightline to the stage, the one that was placed outside the secure perimeter, just so, the one where a 20-year-old climbed onto the roof using that air conditioning unit and nearly changed the course of the world, well, that building was wiped clean the very next morning. Crime scene processed and sanitized within 24 hours. It was also notably the only building at the entire site with no surveillance cameras. 10 days after the shooting, the FBI released Crook's body to his family. Republican Congressman Clay Higgins, a member of the Congressional Task Force, went to Butler on August 5th to request to view the body as part of his investigation. Nobody on the ground knew it was already gone. The FBI had handed it back to the family on July 23rd. Higgins called it an obstruction to any following investigative effort. The FBI said, it's standard procedure. The family has declined every interview request. Both of Crook's parents, who worked as licensed professional counselors, appear to have left the profession entirely in 2024. They have not spoken publicly. They have not explained anything. They are simply gone from public life, as completely as their son is gone from the earth. There is no manifesto, no note, no explanation of any kind. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, in a rare on-record interview about the investigation, said, "Where is the manifesto?" The answer is it doesn't exist. He had no seepage of any kind. He didn't give any indication anywhere that he was going to do this or why he did this. A private investigator hired by a private client to conduct independent analysis of the case completed geofencing analysis of electronic devices found with Crooks and at locations he frequented. His conclusion? We don't think he acted alone. This took a lot of coordination. In my view, Crooks was handled by more than one individual, and he was used for this. This is not a fringe blogger or dorky podcaster. That is a licensed investigator presenting findings from forensic digital analysis. So here's the full picture of what we are left with. Shooter dead within 12 seconds. Crime scene wiped the next morning. Body cremated within days. Parents silent. No manifesto, no motive. 17 social media accounts hidden from Congress for a year. The building, no cameras. The investigation closed. The case called complete. The files are still sealed. The director got promoted, and the president was satisfied with the outcome. 12 seconds is a very fast response time for an agency that, by its own admission, didn't know the threat was there until shots were fired. There is a version of Butler that is a catastrophic institutional failure. Bureaucratic incompetence, siloed information, underfunded security, tragic coincidence. That version is supported by the official record and is the one that congressional investigations formally concluded. There is another version in which the same facts point somewhere else entirely, in which the failures look less like accidents and more like a word I like to use on the show, architecture, in which a 20-year-old with no coherent motive and 17 hidden social media accounts was, in some way that we are not equipped to fully document, a managed event, in which the most perfectly composed political photograph in a generation was not a coincidence but a product, in which the investigation that followed was not an attempt to find the truth, but an attempt to contain it, in which the crime scene was cleaned before the questions could form, in which the body was ash before the congressman could look at it, in which the president's satisfaction is not the satisfaction of a man who got answers, but the satisfaction of a man who already knew them. I cannot tell you which version is true. That's up to you to decide. I'll tell you that the people most positioned to determine which version is accurate, the people with access to Crook's full digital history, his communications, his movements in the days before July 13th, are the same people who took 10 months to acknowledge he had 17 social media accounts, who responded to the worst security failure in the agency's recent history by promoting the man who presided over it, who closed the case with no motive and called it complete, who wiped the building clean before the sun came up, who cremated the body before the task force could look at it, and who, when their own allies demanded the files, went silent. Cashman's line is a provocation dressed as a dismissal. He and I are asking you to consider that sometimes might not be the right word, that what happened in Butler and what happened at the Washington Hilton this last weekend might not be the product of sometimes. It might be the product of always. Now let's discuss Cashman's comments on the magnetometer. Talk about what actually happened at that checkpoint in the Hilton. Cashman makes a joke out of the magnetometer line, and I originally read it as a small one about jargon and about how the internet treats official language like a cipher, but when you actually pull at the thread, it's not a small detail. The magnetometer is where everything happened, and what happened there is genuinely unclear in the official record. Here's what we know. Allen came down the interior stairwell, emerged on the terrace level, approached the security checkpoint, and ran through. The acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, described it in this way at a press conference. Allen, quote, ran through the magnetometer holding a long gun. And as he did, the Secret Service personnel at the checkpoint heard a loud gunshot. One officer was struck in the chest. His ballistic vest saved his life. That officer drew his weapon and fired 5 times at Allen, who fell but was not shot. Now here's where it gets stranger. Blanche stood at the podium on camera and said on record that it was not clear whether the Secret Service agent who was hit was actually shot by Allen. The Department of Justice, the top law enforcement body in the U.S., does not know whose bullet hit their own officer. A federal agent was shot, and the government's own top official is saying they cannot confirm who fired the round that did it. 5 shots went out from law enforcement. 1 shot apparently came from Allen's direction. The math on whose bullet landed where has not been resolved. Then there's the gun itself. The probable cause affidavit contains the detail the empty shell casing from Allen's 12-gauge pump-action shotgun was still in the weapon when he was arrested. It had not been ejected. The gun had not been pumped, meaning if Allen fired that shotgun, he fired it once and never reloaded. A man who allegedly spent months planning an assassination attempt on the president, who trained regularly at a shooting range, who traveled across the country by train with a disassembled long gun in his bag, fired 1 round from a pump-action shotgun and didn't pump it again. And then there's the footage. Trump released surveillance video on social media almost immediately after the shooting. You know he loves social media. When you watch it, what you see is Allen running like a bat out of hell past security officers who are in the process of dismantling the magnetometers, taking them apart. They said once the president was seated in the ballroom, the Secret Service protocol is to close the perimeter and break down the screening equipment. No more guests admitted, checkpoint decommissioned. So the moment Allen chose to make his move was the exact moment the checkpoint was transitioning from active security screening to disassembled hardware. Whether that was superior tactical awareness, extraordinary luck, or mere coincidence, nobody in any official capacity has addressed it. But if the magnetometer moment is murky, what surrounds it is even worse. Because the question of how Cole Allen got to that checkpoint at all with a disassembled shotgun, a handgun, and 3 knives inside a hotel where the President of the United States was sitting down for dinner has a very clear answer. Almost nobody did their job. Or everybody did exactly what they were supposed to. Let's back up to Friday. Allen didn't fly to Washington, he took a train. Los Angeles to Chicago, Chicago to Washington. He checked into the Washington Hilton on Friday afternoon, the day before the event, as a regular hotel guest. Room on the 10th floor, a duffel bag. Inside that duffel bag, in pieces, a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. A Daily Beast editor who was staying in the room next to Allen's told reporters afterward that when he checked in on Friday afternoon, nobody looked at his luggage, not a glance. His colleagues' bags also went unchecked as late as 5 in the evening. That's the day before the event, with the president, the vice president, the entire cabinet, and the entire line of succession for the United States government assembled in the basement ballroom. A man brought a disassembled long gun into that building, and the hotel, which had to have known what was coming, did not check a single bag. He had a full day inside the building. He knew the layout, he knew where the cameras were, he knew where the stairwells went. And on Saturday night, when the event began, he didn't try to fight his way through the main security perimeter. He didn't need to. He went down an interior stairwell, out of public view, away from the heavily monitored areas, descended to the terrace level, the same floor as the foyer leading to the dinner's red carpet, and emerged directly at the security checkpoint. From inside the building, from a direction the entire perimeter wasn't designed to address, the perimeter assumed the threat would come from outside it. The House Oversight Committee called for an immediate Secret Service briefing. The chairman raised something that had been largely unreported. The Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the Secret Service, had been operating without funding for over 70 days at the time of the shooting. 70, not 17, 70 days. The result of a government shutdown that left agents working without pay, resources constrained, institutional attention frayed, and a convenient excuse. Whether that directly caused what happened at the Washington Hilton is something nobody can cleanly answer. But the question has been asked officially in writing by the committee with direct oversight responsibility. Trump's response was to argue for the controversial and ridiculous White House ballroom, which, and we'll come back to this later, tells you something about whose interests the chaos ended up serving. But here's where it starts to get even stranger, and I mean genuinely strange, not just internet strange. Cole Allen is not a random person with a grudge and a gun. This man graduated from Caltech, the California Institute of Technology, one of the most selective and prestigious engineering schools in the whole world, with a degree in mechanical engineering, no less. He later got a master's degree in computer science. By multiple accounts from people who knew him, he was exceptionally intelligent. A former high school teammate described him as a borderline genius. Students he recently tutored called him knowledgeable across a broad range of subjects, entirely normal, entirely friendly, they said. They expressed profound shock when they heard his name. And in 2014, while he was an undergraduate at Caltech, he interned at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL. And JPL confirmed this on the record. 3 months as a summer research fellow working on artificial intelligence models for mapping planets. That connection, Allen to JPL, is the thread Cashman pulls on because JPL has been losing people. Scientists with security clearances and classified research portfolios have been dying and disappearing for several years now. And the man who allegedly just tried to shoot the president used to walk those same halls. We're going to get to that list in a little bit, but hold that connection in the back of your mind for now. Cashman then writes, "Sure, the FBI will later say they were on our radar." Perhaps my favorite line, or one of them, I got so many from that quote. This is a pattern so well established it barely needs documentation. I mean, it's an internet meme. After virtually every major act of political violence in recent American history, it emerges that the perpetrator was known to federal law enforcement in some capacity before they acted. Same thing with things that happen at schools. They were known, monitored, on a list somewhere, and they acted anyway. They were able to act anyway. Allen's sister told investigators after the shooting that her brother had a tendency toward making radical statements and constantly referenced a plan to do, quote, something to fix the world's problems. She told them he was regularly attending No Kings protests. She told them he had purchased multiple firearms, including weapons his own parents didn't know were inside their home. Well, some of the family knew, his community knew the contours of it. It seems whether federal agencies were tracking him specifically has not been publicly confirmed, but the template is consistent. The FBI acknowledges awareness after the fact. Cashman's reference to, quote, 3D printed-looking alphabet agency cutouts who were previously in BlackRock commercials or ABC specials is not a vague cultural observation. It is a precise, documented, verified fact about both men. Let's start with crooks. In 2022, BlackRock, the largest asset management firm in the world, demonic tentacles in everything, managing over $10 trillion in assets, filmed an advertisement at Bethel Park High School in Pennsylvania. The ad was part of a campaign about teachers managing their retirement funds. It featured a real teacher and real students in the background, one of them being Thomas Matthew Crooks. He just so happened to be one of those students in that BlackRock video. He appears briefly. 2 years later, he allegedly climbs onto a roof and tries to shoot the former and future president of the United States. When this emerged, BlackRock confirmed it, pulled the ad immediately, and made all footage available to the authorities. BlackRock is not just a big company. It is, by assets under management, the most powerful financial institution in human history. It is a recurring subject of populist suspicion across the entire political spectrum, cited by the left as a symbol of unchecked capital and by the right as a symbol of globalist elite coordination. It is, in the discourse of both progressive economics and MAGA politics, shorthand for the people who actually run things. And the man who almost killed Donald J. Trump appeared in one of their commercials. Cashman nor I necessarily are saying BlackRock hired Thomas Crooks to shoot anyone. We're saying or pointing at something more unsettling than direct accusation, pointing at the quality, the texture of it all. The way these figures seem to have been touched, however briefly, by the machinery of institutional power before they become instruments of political violence. Now, our most recent would-be assassin, Cole Allen. In 2017, while Allen was an undergraduate at Caltech, he was interviewed on camera by ABC Los Angeles at an aging conference. He had designed a wheelchair braking system and explained it clearly and articulately on air. The interview was broadcast. It's still findable. 9 years later, he boarded a train to Washington with a disassembled long gun in a duffel bag. The first would-be shooter and butler appeared in a BlackRock commercial. The recent shooter, who allegedly tried to kill Trump at the Washington Hilton, appeared in an ABC News segment. 2 men, 2 attempts on the same president, both previously captured on film by major institutional entities, one financial, one media, both described by everyone who encountered them as quiet, intelligent, normal, and friendly. Both operating without clear documented motives, both fitting a profile that doesn't feel lived from the inside so much as constructed from the outside. The 3D printed line is Cashman's way of naming something that a lot of people have noticed but struggle to articulate. These figures have a particular quality to them. Their biographies read like they were assembled from a checklist, intelligent but isolated, described by everyone around them as normal and friendly and unremarkable. No one who knew them saw it coming. A prior appearance in the frame of something institutional and powerful, easy to dismiss as coincidence, impossible to fully forget, and then the divergence. Crooks left nothing, no manifesto, no explanation, no ideology anyone could identify, no motive the FBI could name after a year and a half and 1,000 interviews, just a dead 20-year-old on a roof and a case file that got closed without any answers. But Allen, he left a long manifesto, or at least we're told he did, a document that called him the, quote, friendly federal assassin, laid out multiple targets. He sent it to his family 10 minutes before he ran that checkpoint. Nice and tidy and time-stamped, delivered and incredibly convenient after the criticism of the first attempt. A manifesto is the thing that explains a lone wolf. It's the document that closes the question of motive and makes the narrative legible. We were told Crooks didn't have one, and so the case remained permanently open, permanently strange, and permanently unresolved, leading to much criticism by many. Allen has one, and so within hours the story already had a shape, a motive, a box to put it all in so it could be filed away faster. Cashman's line about the friendly federal assassin, the almost bureaucratic self-designation, is pointing at the quality of the document. It reads less like the writing of a man consumed by rage and more like a form someone filled out. Very clinical and procedural. Moving on, or I'll never get through this, the line about trained at the same ranges as Homeland Security is a direct echo of reporting that emerged after the Butler shooting, where questions arose about Thomas Crook's background and whether he had used federal training facilities. Those questions were never conclusively answered. Cashman is placing Allen in the same lineage of figures who appear from nowhere, carry out spectacular acts of violence, and leave behind a biographical trail that raises more questions than it resolves. And then there's Sirhan. That line, he drops that name after a man convicted of assassinating Robert F. Kennedy in 1968. He claimed at trial and for decades afterward that he had no memory of the shooting. He passed multiple polygraph tests, his attorneys argued, and a significant body of researchers have agreed that his behavior was consistent with hypnotic programming. Those who know about history and the depth of government evil and corruption know about the CIA's MKUltra program. Still needing its own episode, I have more ideas than I do time. The demonic program ran from 1953 into the early 1960s, and it had as one of its explicit goals the creation of subjects who would carry out acts without conscious memory or remorse. Nobody has ever proven Sirhan was an MKUltra subject. Nobody has disproven it either. Cashman drops another dark name from the file cabinet of the CIA in the infrastructure of radicalization, Mr. Charles Manson. Cashman wrote, "It doesn't mean they can isolate, fund, and radicalize any sad lunatic. It's not like the CIA created Charles Manson." This too deserves its own episode, but to the uninitiated, it's not as speculative as it sounds. Journalist Tom O'Neill spent nearly 20 years investigating the Manson murders. His 2019 book, Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s, documents a series of overlaps between Manson's world and the CIA's documented mind control programs. Here's what is confirmed. Manson's parole officer, a man named Roger Smith, was part of a federally funded research program studying LSD and drug use. That program received CIA funding. Manson was required to meet with Smith regularly at the Hot Asbury Free Clinic, a facility that CIA-connected psychiatrist Louis Jolyon West once described privately as a, quote, laboratory disguised as a hippie crash pad. Manson and his followers visited that clinic multiple times per week. CIA-funded researchers were operating inside it. Manson's participation in at least 2 CIA-funded drug research programs has been confirmed. What is not confirmed, and O'Neill is careful about this, is that any of this was deliberate. We can't prove that Manson was recruited, handled, or directed. What O'Neill argues is that the infrastructure was there. The funding, the access, and the chemistry. And that what Manson ultimately did, turn young, impressionable people into instruments of violence that traumatized an entire counterculture movement and discredited the left, aligned perfectly with what the CIA's Operation Chaos was trying to achieve at exactly the same moment. A forensic psychologist O'Neill interviewed, when asked whether the Manson murders might have been an MKUltra experiment gone wrong, well, they answered no. An MKUltra experiment gone right. Whether you find that persuasive or not, the documented reality is this. The CIA ran programs designed to isolate individuals, alter their psychology, and produce behavioral outcomes those individuals weren't consciously aware of. Those programs operated in the same physical spaces with the same people and at the same time as Charles Manson, building a cult of radicalized young killers. Cashman's line isn't conspiracy fiction, folks. It's a pointed reference to a documented institutional capability and a question about whether that capability has ever been retired. Then Cashman shifts to another infamous historical figure who was tied to conspiracies and presidential assassinations. He says it's not like the CIA was following Oswald. The magic bullet is as real today as it was 60 years ago. The CIA's monitoring of Lee Harvey Oswald before the Kennedy assassination is a matter of historical record. The Warren Commission acknowledged it. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, which completed its investigation in 1979, went further, concluding that Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy, and that the CIA's pre-assassination file on Oswald was extensive, poorly explained, and had been actively withheld from the original investigation. This was confirmed in March of 2025 when tens of thousands of classified JFK files were released. Apparently the only files Trump knows how to release. The official headline was, "Nothing changes. Oswald still acted alone," but here's what was actually in those files. The CIA was secretly funding a group of Cuban exiles called the DRE. Those same exiles had been meeting with Lee Harvey Oswald in the months before Kennedy was killed. And within hours of the assassination, before any investigation had started, that CIA-funded group was the first to publicly call Oswald a communist who supported Castro. The media picked it up and ran with it. That became the story. That became who Oswald was. The first public narrative about the man who killed the president came from a group secretly on the CIA's payroll. Then, when Congress investigated the assassination years later, the CIA sent in, I'm going to mess this up, George Joannidis as their representative to the inquiry. The same man who had been running the DRE. He told Congress he had no connection to them. He, of course, was lying. A former investigator said he was there specifically to obstruct the probe. 2 years later, the CIA gave the Joker a medal. He died in 1990. And of course, none of this came out until 2025. So when Cashman writes, it's not like the CIA was following Oswald. Here's the reality. They weren't just watching him, they were secretly running the people who were meeting with them. And when anyone tried to investigate that, they sent in the man who knew all the secrets to make sure nobody found them for 60 years. Then there's the ridiculous magic bullet, the single bullet theory that explains how one round produced 7 wounds across 2 bodies while changing direction multiple times in defiance of logic and basic physics. It was the linchpin of the Warren Commission's conclusion that Oswald acted alone. It has been contested by physicists, forensic analysis, and congressional investigators for 6 decades. It has never been satisfactorily explained, and it remains the official account. Cashman's point isn't that the Correspondents Dinner shooting is the Kennedy assassination. His point is that it doesn't matter which shooting you're looking at, because they all follow the same script. The lone wolf, isolated, troubled, no coherent motive. Anyone can fully explain a narrative that arrives before the body's cold, a clean conclusion that closes the case before the questions can form, and somewhere in the official account, a magic bullet. Something that requires you to accept an explanation that doesn't fit and doesn't work because accepting it is the price of the story making sense. Kennedy had a literal magic bullet. A single round that somehow caused 7 wounds across those 2 bodies, changed direction multiple times, and emerged nearly pristine, mind you. The Warren Commission needed that bullet to be real, so it became real. Robert Kennedy was shot by Sirhan Sirhan in that hotel kitchen in 1968. Sirhan was standing in front of Kennedy, but the autopsy showed the fatal shot entered from behind at point-blank range. Sirhan never got close enough. The official account has never resolved this. Sirhan is still in prison. He has no memory of the shooting. He has said so for 50 years. What about other assassinations on our soil? Martin Luther King was killed by James Earl Ray, a petty criminal and escaped convict with no known connection to any organization with the means or motive to assassinate the most prominent civil rights leader in American history. In 1999, a civil jury found that King's death was the result of a conspiracy involving government agencies. That verdict received almost no mainstream coverage, and it is not part of the official account. What about Malcolm X? He was killed in 1965. 2 of the 3 men convicted spent decades in prison maintaining their innocence. And in 2021, a Manhattan judge vacated their convictions after the Manhattan District Attorney's Office acknowledged that the FBI and NYPD had withheld evidence from the defense for 50 years. Then you got Butler. And now the Correspondents Dinner. 2 recent attempts on the same president, 2 shooters with strange profiles, institutional connections, and incomplete explanations. 2 events wrapped in official conclusions that arrive faster than the forensics, 2 cases where the people demanding answers are being told by the people who control the answers that there's nothing left to find. Cashman is not asking you to believe any specific alternative theory. He's asking you to notice the pattern. What assassination on our soil have we ever been told the truth about? And I haven't even touched on Charlie, and I probably won't this episode. Every major act of political violence on American soil has produced the same thing: a lone wolf, a clean story, a magic bullet of some kind, and if not a magic bullet, a magic vertebrae. Rest in peace, Charlie. 60 years later, or 50 years later, or 30 years later, or 229 days later, the documents come out and show that the institutions responsible for the official account were lying. They were lying about what they knew, about who they were connected to, about what they were doing in the days and weeks and months before the trigger was pulled, every single time. So the question Cashman and I are really asking isn't what happened at the Washington Hilton on April 25th, 2026. The question is, given everything we know now about every other time, why would this time be any different? What's going to be the magic bullet this time? Who is this era's Joannidis? With a mouthful of lies, with a chest full of medals? Guess time will tell. Let's go deeper down the rabbit hole with Cashman, shall we? In the hours after Allen was identified, someone went digging through social media and found something that broke the internet's pattern recognition circuits entirely. A dormant Twitter account under the name Henry Martinez, essentially inactive, had one post of note. It was from 2023. The post consisted of 2 words, a name. That name? Cole Allen. That alone would be strange, but then researchers found that the banner image on the Henry Martinez account traced back to a website called Time Machine. And then, and this is where it compounds, someone found that a person named Henry Martinez was listed as a co-author on a NASA research paper published in 2014, the same year Cole Allen was interning at NASA's JPL. Same institution, same year. As of yet, no confirmed link between these 2 people exists. NASA has not commented. It may be coincidence stacked on coincidence stacked on coincidence. But the image on the Time Machine website banner, described by researchers as looking like a melting magic eye, has been a Rorschach test online. Many people are claiming to see Trump raising his fist in the famous Butler photograph pose. The fight, fight, fight moment, right? They say it's encoded inside the image. Cashman leans into all of this with the, quote, time machines, discombobulators, ghost murmurs, manipulating space-time, annihilating distance. He's not endorsing some time travel theory or anything like that. He's documenting the texture of the information environment around this event and pointing out that the strangeness is real, even when the explanations being offered for it are not. Now, I have mentioned the manifesto. Let's talk about it a little more. Again, it was titled The Friendly Federal Assassin. Allen allegedly called himself the Friendly Federal Assassin. We're told he sent the document to his family 10 minutes before he rushed that checkpoint. It laid out his intention to target Trump administration officials. It contained a line later read on air by Norah O'Donnell during a 60 Minutes interview with Donald Trump, describing the intended target as a pedophile, rapist, and traitor. Trump, when O'Donnell read it to him, immediately responded, "I'm not a rapist, I didn't rape anybody," before she had confirmed who the manifesto was even referring to. The language of the manifesto, the almost bureaucratic self-designation, the friendly federal assassin, is part of what Cashman is gesturing at. It reads less like the writings of a rageful lone wolf and more like someone who had constructed a very specific, almost procedural internal mythology around what he was doing. Again, the best word? Clinical. Almost like a job title. Combined with his Caltech degree, his JPL internship, his history of robotics competitions, his pattern of apparent normalcy to everyone around him, Allen doesn't fit the profile of the disorganized, impulsive mass shooter the lone wolf archetype implies. He fits the profile of someone very organized, very deliberate, and very strange. Another line of Cashman's that I find very entertaining is the safe and effective line. Cashman wrote, "If you trusted the science, you know this was a safe and effective assassination attempt." It's one of the darkest jokes in the piece, I think, and it operates on multiple levels. On the surface, it's a reference, of course, to the, quote, safe and effective language of COVID vaccine messaging, co-opting that phrase to describe an assassination attempt that, in the official account, resulted in no deaths, minimal injuries, and a clean arrest. Safe and effective, indeed, from a certain angle. But underneath that is more pointed observations. The assassination attempt failed completely. Allen was stopped immediately. Nobody of significance was hurt. The president was evacuated without injury. The single shot fired, if Allen even fired it, hit a vest. And the entire operation, from the perspective of someone trying to kill the president, was maximally ineffective. Cashman is asking whether that failure tells us something. Was it incompetence? Was it always intended to be a near miss? He's not answering. Neither am I. Just pointing at the outcome and noting that for a man who spent months planning, trained regularly with firearms, brought multiple weapons, and got all the way to the checkpoint, the result was remarkably, almost surgically contained. Then there's the little IDF connection, because no conspiracy is complete without it. There is a photo circulating the internet of Allen in an IDF sweatshirt. It's currently unconfirmed. The psyop of AI is successfully destroying trust in anything we see with our own eyes. The photo spread widely in the hours after the shooting, particularly on platforms looking to attach a foreign motive or suggest some kind of Mossad-adjacent framing. Now, personally, I thought this was going to be the direction everything was going to go in, since the current war we're in is so incredibly unpopular. I've been waiting for weeks for a false flag to try and trick the American people into supporting this senseless war, but this looks like something that will be used to justify the highly questionable ballroom instead of the highly questionable war. But who knows? There's still time. Word on the street is, I think we're in false flag season, as well as tick season. If you know, you know. Let's start wrapping this up, shall we? I love how Cashman highlights the weaponization of conspiracy theory. It may be the most sophisticated line in the entire post, and the one we most need to sit with. He says they're definitely not mainstreaming conspiracy theories to weaponize conspiracy theories against the conspiracy theorists. Cashman is describing an information operation, not a specific one, but a structural one. The logic works like this. If you flood the information environment with enough theories, some true, some half-true, some entirely made up, you accomplish two things at the same time. First, you make it impossible for anyone to distinguish real patterns from noise. Second, you discredit anyone who notices real anomalies by associating them with the people noticing fake ones. The person who asks legitimate questions about the magnetometer ambiguity gets lumped into the person claiming Allen is AI. The person documenting the JPL deaths gets lumped in with the person claiming the time machine banner contains a portrait of Trump encoded in a melted magic eye picture. Everyone becomes a conspiracy theorist. The label collapses distinctions, and once the label lands, the questions stop, which, by the way, was the intention for that title back when the CIA created it. Cashman has one more thing to say. The conspiracy theorist's autistic level of pattern recognition might be entertaining for a podcast, but it's getting old. Thank you for listening to this podcast, by the way. That line sounds like a dismissal, but in the context of the whole piece, it's the opposite, right? It's another layer of sarcasm that he's laying on like some peanut butter. When he says the conspiracy theorist's autistic level of pattern recognition might be entertaining for a podcast, but it's getting old, he's once again stepping into the voice of the scoffer, the kind of person who rolls their eyes and waves it off and doesn't want to engage with any connections being raised despite decades of evidence. It's not a critique of podcasts at all. It's a critique of the attitude that refuses to look deeper at the evidence right in front of us. Because think about what he's doing the entire time leading up to that line. He's stacking example upon example, historical echoes, strange overlaps, things that don't sit right, that never have, things that we've been lied to about over and over again. And instead of directly arguing them, well, he frames them in that exaggerated, nothing to see here tone. So by the time you get to this line, the reader already feels the weight of those patterns. Entering that scoffer voice, oh, that pattern recognition stuff, yeah, it's just entertaining. It's just content. That's the point. He's exposing how easy it is to trivialize something by labeling it as entertainment. This podcast is purely for entertainment purposes, right? And everything is alleged. Everything's alleged. Once you do that, you don't have to wrestle with it. You don't have to answer it. You just reduce it to noise. You write it off, and the mention of podcasts is also intentional because in its framing, podcasts represent the one space where people are actually willing to chase these patterns, to ask the uncomfortable questions, and refuse to just accept the official narrative, the official script. By no means perfect, not always right, but at least willing to look, willing to ask. So when he says it's, quote, getting old, he's not talking about the pattern recognition itself. He's mocking the fatigue of people who are tired of having those patterns pointed out, tired of hearing the same uncomfortable questions, tired of anything that disrupts the narrative they've already settled into, because the lies make them feel safe. It's like saying, can you stop noticing things already? It's inconvenient. It makes me uncomfortable. That's the tone, and underneath it, sharper implications. Pattern recognition isn't the problem. The problem is what happens when people start recognizing the same kinds of patterns over and over and over again. That's when it stops being coincidence in the eyes of the observer, starts feeling like design. So the line works as a kind of pressure point in the post. On the surface, it mocks the people asking questions, but if you've been tracking his sarcasm from the beginning, it actually turns the spotlight back on the people dismissing them. It's not, you're seeing too much. It's, we're tired of you saying it. And then Cashman starts swinging. Just let the influencers who crawled on their hands and knees in fear for their lives post their gleeful "I survived an assassination" duck-faced selfies. He's not speaking generally here. He's talking about something very specific that actually happened. A political quote-unquote influencer named Deborah Lee or Leah, I don't know, I don't care, was at the dinner that night, and in the aftermath of the shooting, she posted a stupid selfie making that obnoxious social media duck face. She also went on camera outside the Hilton and claimed there were, quote, no pat-downs, no metal detectors, nothing in the way of security at the event. Those claims contradicted the accounts of other attendees and the official record. The posts were deleted after backlash, of course, but not before the internet noticed some more. She's described as a pro-Trump social media personality who attended a TikTok-sponsored inauguration event for pro-Trump online influencers way back in January of 2025. She is, in other words, exactly the kind of figure Cashman is describing, someone whose entire professional existence is built on proximity to power and the content that proximity generates. Within minutes of an assassination attempt on the president of the U.S., while the crime scene is still active, while the forensics are unresolved, while nobody knows whose bullet hit who, you got a woman who reportedly crawling on the floor in fear 1 minute and posting a mindless selfie the next, and then making claims about security that were very inconvenient, that were later deleted. Cashman isn't saying the fear wasn't real, necessarily. He's saying look at what came immediately after it. The people most positioned to ask hard questions about this event, the journalists, the commentators, the influencers, are the same people who were there, who have enormous emotional investment in the event being exactly what the official account says it was, who benefit most professionally from having survived something significant. Their follower counts went up, their Substack numbers climbed. The shooting was, for a meaningful number of people in that room, a career-making moment. That is a conflict of interest. It doesn't disqualify anyone outright, but it's real, and he noticed. And it matters when those same people are the ones shaping the narrative about what happened and why and whether any of it deserves a harder look. Cashman then takes it to the files. Yes, those files, the one Trump says shut up about. He says, this isn't about Epstein, this isn't about FISA warrants, this isn't about the giant doomsday data center beneath the White House. 3 references, each pointing at a different node in the classified infrastructure that runs underneath American political life. Epstein needs, of course, no introduction at this point. The evil financier with unexplained wealth, a client list that included heads of state, intelligence figures, and many currently in our halls of power. The FISA warrant system that he mentions is a classified legal architecture that allows the federal government to conduct surveillance on American citizens without their knowledge and without the standard requirements of criminal procedure. No public hearing, no defense attorney, a secret court that has approved the vast majority of every surveillance request ever brought before it. It was used extensively after 9/11. It has been abused frequently. It remains largely opaque to the public and to most of Congress. And here is the detail Worth knowing the most, in my opinion, when Donald Trump ran for president, he was rightly and loudly against it. FISA warrants were the tool used to surveil his own campaign in 2016. He called it spying. He called it illegal. He called it one of the greatest political crimes in American history. His base, myself included, made FISA abuse a central grievance of the entire MAGA movement. Then he gets into office, and he reauthorized it. Not reluctantly, not with conditions, he pushed for its reauthorization. He signed it, and the surveillance architecture he once called criminal became, once in power, a tool he was happy to keep because he's a liar. And if you're still believing him, I'm praying for you. Cashman's reference to FISA warrants in the same breath as Epstein and the doomsday data center beneath the White House is pointing at this. These are the structures of unaccountable power that exist underneath the public political theater. The ones that every candidate promises to dismantle, the ones that every president once seated quietly decides to keep. The face turn is not a bug, it's the whole point. My friends, he was never going to drain the swamp, he simply planned to build underneath it. Beneath the White House complex, there is a genuinely real, genuinely massive underground facility used for continuity of government operations, the kind of infrastructure that exists specifically for scenarios where the surface-level government ceases to function. Cashman isn't saying the White House Correspondents Dinner shooting is connected to any of these things. He's saying these things exist. They are real. They are mostly hidden, and they are the backdrop against which all of this is occurring. The shooting didn't occur in a vacuum. It occurred inside a specific architecture of power, secrecy, money, and surveillance that most people never think about and few people fully understand. And he ends it all with the ballroom. Ballroom, 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 ballroom. A word we began hearing within hours of the event, in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, while people were still processing, while the forensics were unresolved, while the questions we've just spent this entire episode cataloging were forming. Trump and all his followers used the event to argue for something he'd already been pushing for, a dedicated White House ballroom. The Washington Hilton, he said, was not secure enough. Senator John Fetterman, a Democrat, went on X within hours to say the venue wasn't built to accommodate an event with the line of succession for the United States government, and he urged people to drop the TDS and build the White House ballroom. Within hours of a shooting, while the forensics were again unresolved, while nobody could confirm whose bullet hit who, while the crime scene was still active inside the Washington Hilton, a coordinated message began moving across social media. Ballroom, ballroom, ballroom. It wasn't just Trump and Fetterman, it was the entire ecosystem. It was every freaking MAGA influencer, the commentators, the pro-Trump social media personalities, the same network of accounts that had been at TikTok inauguration parties and dinners and award ceremonies. They all began saying the same thing at the same time with the same talking points. The Washington Hilton isn't secure enough. We need a White House ballroom. We need a ballroom. Build the ballroom. Build the ballroom. The president deserves a safe venue. Ballroom, ballroom, ballroom. Again, even Fetterman, a Democrat, went on X. Drop the TDS, he says. Build the ballroom. When you got your opposition amplifying your message within hours of a shooting, you don't have a talking point. You have a movement. Cashman ends his entire piece with that word, ballroom, repeated dozens of times until it stops meaning anything. It looks like madness. It's actually the most precise observation in the whole post. He's showing you what it sounds like when a coordinated message gets deployed at scale. And folks, the left ain't the only one that does it. The right does too, and we got to see it this weekend. Because left and right are wings of the same bird. And I know I keep saying that, but that's because you still need to hear it. When hundreds of accounts say the same word at the same moment, when an agenda that existed before the shooting suddenly has the emotional weight of a traumatic national event behind it, when the chaos gets converted into policy momentum before the blood is dry, he's not repeating the word to simply mock the idea of the ballroom. He's repeating it so you can hear what it sounds like when the trick is being performed, when the magician says, "Look at the other hand." I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this next thing in this episode, but it does feel prudent, it feels necessary, it seems as though it may be related. It's the thing Cole Allen has in common with a growing list of people who worked in the same corridors of advanced aerospace and classified research that he once passed through as a young intern at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Because while the Correspondents' Dinner was burning through the news cycle, while the Substack numbers climbed and the ballroom discourse raged and the magnetometer became a meme, a quieter story had been building for months, years even. Scientists, engineers, people with security clearances and access to programs the public doesn't officially know exist, well, they're dead or they're missing in numbers that the FBI and the United States Congress have now decided they can no longer explain away. I want to lay out that list for you today. We're not going to analyze it. I'm not going to pretend I have answers. We'll probably come back to this in the future. I've just spent over an hour explaining why I'm concerned and why I probably won't believe the narrative even after they pretend to investigate it. So we're going to step back from the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting for a moment and examine a thread running underneath all of this that most coverage isn't touching. And as we mentioned, Cole Allen had a Caltech degree, and he interned at NASA's JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. His name had been posted to a dormant Twitter account in 2023 by someone who also had NASA JPL connections. All of it strange enough on its own, but stranger if you know what's been going on with JPL. JPL has been losing people. I told you this is not metaphorical. I'm talking literal. Scientists with security clearances, advanced aerospace credentials, and access to classified research programs. They've been dying and disappearing at a rate that is now the subject of more than silly podcasts, but the subject of a formal FBI investigation and a congressional probe. Here are the scientists. Amy Eskridge, June 11th, 2022. She was 34 years old, a scientist and innovator working in advanced propulsion at the Institute for Exotic Science in Huntsville, Alabama, where I used to live as a boy. Her focus was anti-gravity research and UAP-related energy systems, the kind of work that sits right at the edge of what the government publicly acknowledges. UAP, remember, is the newer term for UFOs. Before she died, she went on record saying her life was in danger. She said she and her team were being subjected to psychological warfare designed to stop their work. She said it on podcasts and interviews. She was very specific about it. And she died June 11th, 2022. Authorities ruled it a self-inflicted gunshot wound, because of course they did. No investigation report has ever been publicly released. And her family, when asked about it recently, told CNN that people should realize, well, scientists die too. And don't make too much of it, which is either the most reasonable statement in the world or the saddest one, depending on how you want to look at it. What we do know is that a retired British intelligence officer named Frank Milburn reviewed the case and concluded it was not a suicide. He presented those findings to Congress in 2023. That ain't a Reddit post. That's a former intelligence professional in front of lawmakers saying the official story doesn't add up. Moving on to Michael David Hicks, July 30th, 2023. 59 years old, a research scientist at NASA JPL. He worked on the DART asteroid deflection mission, the one that intentionally crashed a spacecraft into an asteroid to see if we could redirect it. Yes, I know what you're thinking, just like those movies? Yeah, just like the movies. He also worked on near-Earth asteroid tracking, the Dawn mission, and Deep Space One. The cause of his death has never been publicly disclosed. We have Frank Maywald, July 4th, 2024. 61 years old, principal researcher at NASA JPL. His work focused on Earth observation, space instrumentation, and detecting biosignatures. That's signs of life beyond our planet. He died on the 4th of July. The cause of death, of course, was never publicly disclosed, and no autopsy was performed. So we got 2 JPL scientists dead in back-to-back years. No public cause of death for either one. Anthony Chavez, missing since May 4th, 2025. 78 years old, he worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory for decades before retiring in 2017. Los Alamos should make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. It's fascinating because it's where we built the first nuclear bomb. It's where some of the most sensitive research in the world still happens. And on May 4th, Chavez left his home on foot. He left his wallet, left his keys, left his phone. His car was still in the driveway. There were no signs of a struggle. His family said it was completely out of character for him. Extensive searches were conducted, and they found nothing. and he has never been located. Monica Jacinto Riza, missing since June 22, 2025. This one is particularly striking. Riza was 60 years old. She was the director of materials processing at NASA JPL and a co-inventor of something called Mondaloy, a nickel-based superalloy used in rocket engines that she developed while working at Rocketdyne. This material is directly tied to U.S. national security aerospace programs. She spent over 37 years in advanced rocket materials research, working with the Air Force Research Laboratory to scale up production of this alloy for insertion into rocket engines. On June 22, 2025, she went hiking with a companion in Angeles National Forest near Mount Waterman. They were about 30 feet apart on the trail. Her companion turned to check on her. She smiled. She waved. He turned back. He looked again. Seconds later, she was gone. Helicopters, drones, canine units, days of searching. Her body was never found. The case was eventually transferred to the LA County Sheriff's Homicide Bureau. Here's the thread that connects her to what comes next. Her research was funded by the Air Force Research Laboratory, the same program that was overseen by a man named Major General William Neal McCaslin. That name is important. More on him in a moment. Melissa Cassius, missing since June 26, 2025. 4 days after Riza vanished, another person disappeared. Cassius was 53 years old and worked in an administrative role with the security clearance at Los Alamos National Laboratory. She was last seen walking alone on a roadside in Taos County, New Mexico. Her car was at home, her purse was at home, her keys were at home. Both of her phones were at home, and both had been factory reset, wiping all the data. Her family strongly rejected the idea that she left voluntarily. Like the others, she has never been found. Then there's Stephen Garcia, missing since August 28, 2025. 48 years old, a government contractor at the Kansas City National Security Campus in Albuquerque, a classified federal facility involved in nuclear weapons research. He left his home with only a handgun, no phone, no personal items, nothing. No trace of him has been found. Nuno Loureiro died December 16, 2025. 47 years old, the director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, one of the leading fusion physicists in the world, working on technologies aimed at producing near-limitless clean energy. They really hate that. On December 15th, he was shot at his home in Brookline, Massachusetts. He died the following day. Police linked his killer to a separate mass shooting at Brown University carried out days earlier. The suspect, a former classmate of Loureiro's from Portugal, died by suicide. Authorities say the motive was personal, not research-related. How convenient. A leading fusion physicist is dead, and the only person who could explain why, well, they killed themselves. Jacob Pritchard is a little spicier, October 25th, 2025. Again, this one's different. Pritchard was 34 years old and worked at the Air Force Research Laboratory Sensors Directorate at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the same institution McCaslin commanded. Well, told you we're getting to him. Pritchard was not a victim. He was the perpetrator of a murder-suicide. He killed his wife and a female Air Force lieutenant before taking his own life. He's on this list because of his direct institutional connection to the same classified network. Wright-Patterson is also the base, long rumored to house material from one of the most famous moments in American UFO history. Yes, the Roswell incident, which the Air Force has always denied, of course. Carl Grillmer, February 16, 2026, 67 years old, a Caltech astrophysicist who spent his career working with the Hubble and Spitzer space telescopes. He contributed to the first detection of water signatures on exoplanets, meaning he was part of the team that found evidence of water existing beyond our solar system. At 6 a.m, he was shot dead on his front porch at his home in Llano, California. The suspect had faced trespassing charges related to Grillmer's property, which were dropped weeks before the killing. He allegedly came back. He's been charged with murder. And now finally, we've arrived to Major General William Neal McCaslin, missing since February 27th of this year, 2026. This is one of the things that ties everything together. McCaslin was 68 years old. He was the former commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He oversaw $4.4 billion in classified aerospace research and development. He had full oversight of every special access program in the Department of Defense. And according to the 2016 WikiLeaks release of John Podesta's emails, he had a known connection to UAP research. On the morning of February 27th, a repairman visited his home in Albuquerque. McCaslin interacted with him around 10 a.m. His wife left for a doctor's appointment shortly after. She came back at noon, and he was gone. He left behind his phone, his prescription glasses, his wearable devices. He took with him his wallet, his hiking boots, and a .38 caliber revolver. A gray Air Force sweatshirt was found about 1.25 miles from his home. His clothing was later found at a second property in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, 200 miles away. The FBI joined the search, dozens of tips, helicopter infrared sweeps, but nothing confirmed. His disappearance came within days of President Trump announcing he was directing the Pentagon to release classified records on UFOs and extraterrestrial life. A Republican Congressman, Eric Burleson of Missouri, told Fox News that his staff had already been trying to reach McCaslin about a separate congressional UFO investigation before he vanished. He called him the UFO general. He said losing him right then was, and I'm paraphrasing, really, really strange. The FBI is now formally investigating whether these cases are connected. The House Oversight Committee has launched its own probe. NASA convened an interagency effort. These are not the actions of institutions responding to internet rumors. These are the actions of institutions that have looked at the same list and decided it warrants serious attention. 11 people, dead or missing, all tied to advanced aerospace, nuclear, or exotic energy research. Some with security clearances, some working on programs that don't officially exist, scattered across a 4-year window and accelerating in frequency. We don't know what's going on, and I don't trust the government to tell us the truth now or later. And that's the point. When have they told us the truth about anything? And since they haven't, why do we still trust them with anything? Why do we continue to play the game? I told you a few weeks ago I was done playing that game. You can think I'm nuts all you want, but much of what I shared with you, you can find. Where does that leave us? After everything we walked through today, the shooting, the gaps, the patterns, the silence, the missing people, the dead scientists, the unanswered questions stacked on top of each other like bricks in a wall that nobody seems interested in tearing down, well, you're left with a choice. Not a theory, but a choice. Because the facts, at least the ones we're allowed to see, don't resolve cleanly. They don't wrap up neatly. They don't give you the kind of neat ending that makes you feel comfortable turning the page and moving on. Instead, they sit there, incomplete, fractured. Just enough information to form a shape, but not enough to confirm what you're actually looking at. And that's where most people check out. Because it's easier that way. It's easier to accept the official version even when it feels thin, even when it raises more questions than answers, even when the same patterns keep showing up across decades of history. The lone wolves, the clean narratives, missing pieces, sealed files, magic bullets, promoted officials seemingly failing upward or being rewarded for lying. And then silence. It's easier to laugh at the people asking questions than to wrestle with the possibility that the questions might be valid. I think that's what Cashman was getting at. Not that every theory is true, not that every connection is even meaningful, but that something keeps happening over and over again, and every time it does, we're told the same thing. Move along, nothing to see here. And every time, years later, documents come out, details surface, and the story we're told falls apart. Maybe the real question isn't what happened at the Washington Hilton. Maybe the real question isn't even what happened in Butler. Maybe the question is, how many times does the same pattern have to repeat before we stop calling it coincidence? I told you, what assassination or assassination attempt that's ever been on our soil have we fully been told the truth about? Either the event itself or the motives for the event. Not one. I hope this podcast is still out there 60 to 80 years later. I hope somebody's listening and knows what really happened to Charlie. Maybe they'll know. Maybe we never will. At some point, refusing to look becomes just as much a choice as believing too quickly, and right now we're living in that tension. Between people who see patterns everywhere and people who refuse to see anything at all, between noise and signal, narrative and truth. And I told you earlier, I can't give you a definitive answer for this stuff, but I can tell you this. Whatever is happening, whether it's incompetence, coordination, or something we don't even have language for yet, it's not as simple as they're telling us it is. And if history has taught us anything, it's that the truth doesn't usually show up when the case is closed. It shows up years later, after the files are unsealed, after the people involved are long gone, after the moment has passed and nobody can do anything about it. So don't let them rush you past it. Don't let them package it for you, and don't let them convince you that asking questions is the problem, because if there's one thing that actually does get old, it's being lied to. I'm tired of being lied to. I hope you are as well. If you are, man, keep coming back for more with me. I thank you for listening. I know today was different. I hope you found it interesting, informative. Maybe I stepped on your toes. Maybe you're like, I was thinking that but didn't want to say it. Well, I said it, so maybe I'll be on that list by myself, but I'll be thinking about you. How's that? Thank you again for coming back. Thank you for joining me, listening to The Dancing Toaster. Please like, share, subscribe, do all those things wherever you consume The Dancing Toaster. But whatever you do, don't consume toasters and don't consume the narratives that they're feeding you. Because, my friends, they're lying. I love you. I'm out.
Government officials insist that this an isolated incident is perhaps